Dean Martin was in the middle of singing one of his most famous songs on a packed stage in Las Vegas. The room was buzzing with excitement, the kind of energy only a star of his caliber could create. The crowd clapped along, some sang softly under their breath, and the warm glow of the stage lights made everything feel alive. Then, without warning, something unusual happened. A faint murmur ran through the audience. The music faltered just slightly. Dean's eyes flicked toward the wings of the stage. Not a technical glitch. Not yet. Something more serious had arrived, something personal and unexpected. What he did next would either shock everyone in the room or turn the night into something unforgettable. In that instant, every person in the audience leaned forward without realizing it. There was a subtle tension, the kind you feel when something important is about to happen, but you can't yet understand what. It was one of those moments where the ordinary energy of a performance shifts into something more human, something unpredictable. And Dean Martin, with his legendary charm and confidence, was about to face it head-on. This wasn't just a performance. It wasn't just another night on a stage. It was a moment that revealed something deeper about who Dean Martin really was. Behind the smiles, the effortless singing, and the jokes that made everyone laugh, there was a man with a quiet strength, someone who could handle life's unexpected blows with grace. The audience had no idea what was happening backstage. To them, Dean Martin was just the star on stage, singing flawlessly. They saw his easygoing charm and assumed everything was simple, effortless. But this moment was different. It showed that even someone as talented and experienced as Dean could face a challenge that demanded more than skill. It demanded courage, composure, and emotional control. It was the kind of moment that doesn't make headlines but stays with those who witness it. The lights, the applause, the music, they were all part of the show. But beneath it there was tension, something fragile, something that could have easily gone wrong. And yet, Dean handled it. Not perfectly, not in a way that made him look invincible, but in a way that revealed his humanity. This brief pause in the performance, this subtle shift in the air, set the stage for a story that went beyond music. It was about character, about control, about the quiet decisions a person makes when no one else fully understands the pressure they are under. Even though the audience didn't realize it at the time, this tiny moment, a glance, a pause, a change in his behavior, would become one of the most memorable and revealing instances of Dean Martin's career. It wasn't about the song itself. It wasn't about the applause or the lights. It was about how Dean chose to respond when something unexpected threatened to change the night completely. In those few seconds, the audience unknowingly witnessed a test of resilience. And it would define more than just that evening. It would show what kind of man Dean Martin was when he was forced to make a split-second choice under pressure. That is why this moment matters. Not for the song, not for the fame, but for what it revealed about courage, control, and character, qualities often invisible behind the spotlight, but critical when life intrudes on performance. By starting the story here, we drop into the tension immediately. The audience is pulled into the moment. They can feel the energy of the crowd, the weight of the pause, and the subtle signals that something is off. And most importantly, they are left wondering, what will Dean do next? How will he handle this unexpected shock? This sets up the entire story to unfold. Every micro-movement, every glance, every decision becomes meaningful. And by the time we move into the next section, the audience is already invested, curious, and ready to follow Dean Martin through the moment that defined him in ways few ever saw. The year was 1965, and the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas was alive with glittering lights and the low hum of anticipation. Celebrities mingled, critics watched closely, and the audience buzzed with excitement, expecting the effortless charm of Dean Martin on stage. One misstep could change the energy of the night, and everyone there knew it. Dean stepped onto the stage, crisp suit, easy smile, and a presence that made the room feel smaller somehow, as if all eyes were drawn to him without a word. The applause was warm, the crowd ready, and yet behind the surface of charm, a quiet tension lingered. Dean could feel it, subtle shifts in the stage crew's movements, the brief flicker of concern in a manager's eyes, the faint hesitation in the band's rhythm. He understood instantly that this was not a normal night. He began to sing, voice smooth, confident, seemingly unaware of anything amiss. To the audience, it was a perfect performance, effortless as always. But backstage, a small ripple of chaos had begun. A message arrived that carried news no one in the room could guess, something personal and unexpected. Dean knew he had to maintain the show while confronting this invisible weight pressing on him. The stakes were clear. In a place like Las Vegas, a split-second reaction could make or break the night. One faltered note, one pause too long, and the room would notice. Dean had faced tough crowds and unpredictable moments before, but this was different. It wasn't about entertainment. It wasn't about the lights or applause. It was about control under pressure, the kind that only someone seasoned and calm could handle. He carried on, every gesture measured, every note steady. Yet the tension in the air grew, like the faint tightening of strings in an unseen orchestra. The audience sensed something subtle, a shift they couldn't name, a pause in rhythm that made their hearts beat a little faster. Dean's charm remained, but behind it, the audience could feel the invisible weight he carried. As he moved through the song, small signs hinted at what was happening behind the scenes. A stagehand's hurried step, the slight hesitation of the piano chords, the brief, knowing glance between crew members, all invisible to most, but adding a layer of suspense that made the moment feel charged. Every decision Dean made seemed ordinary, but each one had the potential to change the night completely. Dean's composure was remarkable. He smiled, gestured, and performed as if nothing had changed, yet the room was quiet with anticipation, even if the audience didn't fully understand why. The tension was building slowly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that anyone watching closely could sense that the night was teetering on the edge. By the time he reached the middle of the song, the room felt suspended in time. The energy of excitement, the rhythm of the music, and the invisible pressure behind the stage all combined into something palpable. Dean was navigating it effortlessly, but the invisible storm of uncertainty promised that a defining moment was approaching. The calm on the surface made the tension underneath even more striking, and the audience, unaware of the full truth, was about to witness something unforgettable. As the performance continued, the subtle unease began to grow. The band's timing wavered slightly, the lights flickered for just a moment, and the audience remained unaware that this wasn't part of the act. Backstage, urgency built quietly. Dean's eyes moved with precision, scanning for potential disruptions, aware of every detail. He had to keep singing, keep performing, and yet in his mind he processed news that could have stopped most performers in their tracks. Every movement, every note, every glance was deliberate. Dean balanced the show's perfection with the weight of what he had just learned. It was a careful dance, one that required focus, poise, and courage. The slightest misstep could ripple outward, changing the mood in the room, drawing attention to the tension no one wanted to notice. The pressure intensified. Subtle cues of concern from the crew, the slight tightening of a stagehand's jaw, a manager signaling softly from the side, these details created a quiet sense of escalation. The audience still only saw the smooth performance. They could feel a slight tension, even if they couldn't explain it, but no one fully understood the stakes. Dean maintained control, moving with a steady rhythm, his charm and calmness masking the gravity of the moment. He was performing not just for the crowd, but against the invisible challenge he faced, a challenge that tested his professionalism and inner strength. Each second stretched, and every decision carried weight. By now, the night's pressure had grown almost tangible. The crowd's applause continued, but the rhythm shifted subtly, the energy holding its breath. Dean's performance became a tightrope walk, each note measured, each gesture calculated. What was invisible to the audience, the personal weight, the unseen stress made the story gripping, building to the moment that would define the night. The music was flowing, smooth and familiar, but everything had changed in an instant. Dean Martin paused mid-song. The audience, lost in the rhythm of the tune, barely noticed at first, but the slight break, the stillness in his movement, drew a quiet tension through the room. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. Dean's eyes scanned the stage, the crowd, the wings. He could feel the weight of expectation pressing down, not from the audience alone, but from every corner of the stage, the technicians, the musicians, the managers, even the critics who were scribbling notes at their tables. Everything depended on what he would do next. The decision was simple in action but monumental in impact. He took a step forward, deliberate and calm. With one hand, he adjusted the microphone, and with the other, he made a gesture toward the young performer waiting nervously at the side of the stage. The audience's applause continued, but it was softer now, almost questioning. Dean handed over the microphone. The music quieted, but only for a moment. The room went silent. Not a single person moved. The lights seemed dimmer, shadows stretching across the audience as if the pause had slowed the world itself. Every eye was fixed on Dean and the small figure holding the microphone. The subtle weight of the moment, the unseen struggle, the invisible pressure hung thickly in the air. Dean didn't speak. He didn't rush. He waited, calm and composed, letting the moment breathe. This wasn't about drama for effect. This was about presence, control, and the quiet courage to make a choice that would ripple through the night. The audience, unaware of the personal weight behind the action, felt something shift. They couldn't name it, but they could sense the gravity. Every detail mattered: the tilt of his head, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the slight motion of his hand guiding the performer. The room held its breath. For the first time that evening, the invisible pressure became visible, not through words or announcements, but through the stillness and tension that filled the air. Dean's pause, his decision, created a space where the ordinary became extraordinary. In those few moments, the story of the night, the performance, and even Dean himself condensed into a single, simple action. No flourish, no announcement, just the deliberate choice to hand over the spotlight, to embrace the unexpected, and to maintain control without breaking composure. The impact wasn't immediate for everyone. Some continued clapping automatically, unaware of the weight. Others leaned forward, senses alert, realizing that something significant had just occurred. That pause, that gesture, that stillness, it transformed the performance from a song into a story of character, courage, and subtle triumph. The silence lingered for a moment longer, a fragile bubble of awe and curiosity. Then slowly, the audience began to react. Hands clapped tentatively at first, almost questioning whether it was part of the act. Then the applause grew stronger, warmer, filled with recognition. They didn't know exactly why, but something profound had just happened on stage. Backstage, crew members exchanged quiet glances, realizing that Dean had handled a situation that could have derailed everything. His calm, his control, and his decision to act deliberately had prevented disaster and transformed the moment into something memorable. The young performer, still holding the microphone, exhaled with relief, eyes wide. The room had shifted around them. What had been a routine song now carried layers of meaning, tension, courage, and human vulnerability. Everyone, from the front row to the musicians on stage, could feel it, even if they couldn't fully understand it. Dean returned to the song, finishing each note with the same smooth charm and effortless timing, but now there was a subtle difference in his presence. A quiet authority had entered the room. The audience felt it not through words, but through energy, through the way he moved, through the quiet strength of his performance. For a few seconds, nobody moved, nobody spoke, and the weight of the moment hung in the air. Then, slowly, laughter and applause returned, mingling with the previous awe. People who had only come to see a performance now left with a story they wouldn't forget. A story not about the music alone, but about resilience, composure, and grace under pressure. Even critics at the back tables, pens poised over notebooks, paused. They had expected a standard show, a smooth evening of entertainment. Instead, they had witnessed something rare, a glimpse into the character of a man whose fame often masked his humanity. Dean Martin had turned a potential disruption into a defining moment. The performance continued, the song finished, and the crowd rose in appreciation. But the echoes of that pause, that single gesture, lingered in the minds of those present. They didn't fully understand it, but they knew it mattered. In the end, the moment was simple. A pause, a decision, a hand extended to another performer. Yet it carried weight far beyond the music. It revealed a man who could face the unexpected, stay composed, and make choices that spoke louder than any song. It was a moment that no photograph or headline could capture, only the memory of those who had truly seen it unfold. That pause, that single gesture on stage, was more than a moment in a song. It was a window into who Dean Martin really was. Most people saw him as a charming entertainer, a singer with effortless style, someone who could make the world laugh and sing along. But in those seconds of stillness, when the room held its breath, the audience saw something deeper. It was courage, not the dramatic kind shouted in movies, but quiet, composed courage. The courage to face an unexpected challenge, to make a choice under pressure, and to maintain grace in front of hundreds of eyes. Dean could have continued the song, ignored the message, or tried to keep the night perfect at all costs. But he chose something different. He acknowledged the moment, acted deliberately, and allowed the situation to breathe without losing control. It was also about control, the kind of control that isn't about authority or dominance but about self-awareness. Dean managed the room, the crowd, the music, and his own emotions all at once. He let no one else dictate the outcome, and yet he did it with subtlety, without showing tension, panic, or doubt. Every movement, every glance, every note he sang after that pause carried the weight of that choice. The audience may have thought it was just performance, but it was so much more. Respect followed naturally from that composure. Everyone in the room, the audience, the crew, the musicians, even critics, could feel it. Respect wasn't demanded with words or gestures. It emerged from the way he handled the moment. That single action revealed character in a way that applause or recognition could never capture. People left the room not only impressed with the performance, but with the man behind it. Even years later, this moment stands out because it was small yet profound. There was no dramatic declaration, no sweeping gesture, no headline-making stunt. Just a pause, a choice, and a quiet demonstration of poise. It reminds us that sometimes the most significant actions are the ones that are understated, the ones that test us privately but are witnessed publicly. Dean Martin showed that real strength often comes in subtle ways, without fanfare, but with lasting impact. It's also a lesson in humanity. The performance could have been flawless, mechanical, like any other night, but it was. It was human. There was imperfection, there was emotion, there was decision-making under pressure. And that is what makes the story timeless. People remember the energy, the tension, the quiet heroism in a single pause more than they remember every note of the song. This moment revealed layers of Dean Martin that most fans never saw. His capacity to balance charm and responsibility, humor and seriousness, performance and humanity. It is a reminder that behind every public figure, every star, there are private battles, invisible choices, and quiet victories that define who they are. The pause on stage that night was one of those victories, small, silent, and powerful. By seeing Dean Martin in this moment, the audience experiences a story that goes beyond music and fame. It becomes about character, courage, and composure. It shows that real greatness is often revealed not in the spotlight alone, but in the decisions we make under pressure, and in the grace with which we handle the unexpected. That single moment on stage, the pause, the gesture, the quiet choice, defined Dean Martin in a way that performance alone never could. He wasn't just a singer or entertainer. He was a man who could stay calm under pressure, make deliberate decisions in the face of uncertainty, and inspire respect without saying a word. The audience that night left the room carrying more than a memory of a song. They carried a glimpse of Dean Martin's character. They saw resilience, composure, and humanity in a fleeting but unforgettable moment. That is what made him legendary, Not just the music, the charm, or the fame, but the way he carried himself when no one expected him to. Even today, when people look back at Dean Martin, they often focus on his hits, his smile, and his stage presence. But the story of that pause, of the decision to act calmly and with intention, shows the true essence of the man behind the legend. It's a story of quiet courage, subtle leadership, and integrity under pressure. If moments like this matter to you, then you understand what it means to see greatness in action, not in loud declarations or dramatic gestures, but in the choices made when it matters most. Sometimes, the most remarkable things are revealed in silence, in the briefest pause, in the understated courage of a single act. The lights dim, the stage quiets, and Dean Martin's legacy remains, not just in songs that everyone remembers, but in the moments that few witnessed, moments that define who he was beyond the fame, beyond the laughter, beyond the applause.